Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and it's lovely to have you join me. Now, are you worried about memory loss? How many times do you walk into a room and think, why did I walk into here? What did I come in here for? Or where did I put my keys? Now, of course, sometimes this is just part of our normal life. If we're feeling stressed, obviously, we have so many things on our mind. But what about aging and our brain health? What about our memory and preserving and keeping our mind and brain healthy as we age? As we age, memory loss and the thought of Alzheimer's or dementia becomes an issue, doesn't it? And today's guest, Allison Liu, is going to help us talk about optimising the health of our brain as we get older. Now, Allison is a qualified brain health coach who empowers women to get their brain younger, healthier and stronger to prevent Alzheimer's disease, dementia and memory. She's passionate about helping women optimise their health of the brain as they age. And while memory loss is common, it's not normal. There's so much we can do to prevent and slow down brain aging and memory loss. So if you're worried about your memory declining or how you can optimise your brain health, this is the episode for you. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Allison. It's so lovely to have you join me today on the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Oh, Sue, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to come onto your podcast to talk about healthy brain aging, which is something I'm now so passionate about.
Yes, and I can feel that passion even through your writing. When we've been corresponding, I can feel the passion you have for that, because it's such an important topic, I think, and one that I haven't actually covered before on the podcast, so that's really good. So what I'd like to do is just get you to tell the listeners a little bit about your background and why you trained in this particular area. Why is brain health something that you're so passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to be honest, when I was younger, I never really thought about my brain. We hear a lot about ways to look after our heart or after our skin, but not so much about our brain. So my personal journey only started about 10 years ago when I was still going through the perimenopause, and I noticed some changes in my own mental health that were really quite unnerving. I found that I was making impulsive decisions that, to be honest, were at times worryingly dangerous. And afterwards, I'd be really shaken up and think, how can I ever stop myself from making such impulsive decisions like that again? I was becoming increasingly anxious and irritable, which was just so unlike me. By nature, I'm really quite a positive person and energetic and quite gentle, but I was starting to have panic attacks and I would lose my temper over like really petty things. And I could tell that my husband was noticing the changes that he could see in me and was really concerned, but he didn't know what he could do to help. I was worried about what people would think at work because I started to forget what I was saying, literally right in the middle of saying it, and struggled to express myself or put my thoughts together. And at times I'd have no recollection of certain meetings that had taken place or decisions that had been made. And I was honestly worried that my capability would start to be questioned. And that's a horrible feeling. I am a manager and I've been really capable all my career, and I was being paid to deliver results and manage relationships. But there I was struggling to perform in my job. And honestly, it felt like I was losing my sense of self. I didn't recognize myself in how I was behaving. And I wasn't able to control anything of what I've just explained. So it wasn't as though I could tell myself not to make impulsive decisions or to remember what I couldn't recall. I think that's why it was so frightening, because it felt like it was outside of my control. And around that time, I started to be interested in natural ways to look after our health. I had been on medications earlier in my life, and they'd had side effects that really weren't great. And so I started to learn about various things I could do, and my knowledge and understanding really built from there. So I would experiment with things to see, would they make me better or make me worse? And what happened actually was amazing. So after a little while, I'd look in the mirror and I think, my skin looks brighter, and my digestion started to improve. And it had always been like really sluggish all my life, and yet started to get better. And the brain fog that I felt that I'd been in for some time just started to lift. And I can't tell you how amazing it was to be able to think more clearly again. So over time, my mood also started to improve, and my panic attacks stopped. And so I just don't get panic attacks anymore. And I'm back to solving problems really quickly at work and adding value. And I'm genuinely more happy in myself and feel that I'm back to myself again. And I know as well that that's affected my relationships with those closest to me. So I now live in a way that really supports my body to function well, and my brain. And I feel that that's so key to feeling good, improving my memory, and thinking clearly. And so because of the experience that I've been through, I then decided to train as a health coach, because I wanted to inspire and empower and equip other people on their own journey to better health and better mental well-being as well. Because our brain kind of makes us who we are, and it's so important. And yet we most likely spend way more time, money, and effort on looking after our skin than we do our brain. It's because we can see it, so we buy anti-aging creams, and we use sunscreen and all of that kind of stuff. Well, I'm really passionate about changing people's understanding about the brain so that they realize just how important it is, and start to invest in the health of their brain. There's so much that we can do to look after it. Personally, I think it's the most valuable asset that we own. And so I work with men and women mainly in their 40s and 50s, who are struggling with brain fog or memory loss, or they fear the future because maybe there's somebody in their family who's got Alzheimer's or other form of dementia. And so I work with them to reclaim their mental sharpness and face the future with hope and with confidence.
Well, that's a very powerful story you have there. And you were, we talk about brain fog, and if you speak to any woman who's in perimenopause or, menopause, around that area, we just accept the fact that, that's just a symptom of going through that phase of life, or it's just a part of aging. And I think that there is a hidden fear that it is something more. Like, I know myself, if I walk into a room and I can't remember why did I walk in here, or where did I put my keys, or things like that. Now, sometimes that could just be because I've got lots of other things on my mind, but you do feel, oh, is that the beginning of something? So, is memory loss inevitable? Is it part of aging? And, what are some of the warning signs? I know you have covered a little bit, but what are the warning signs when we really can't brush it off anymore as just, an aging process?
Yeah, absolutely. So my grandmother had dementia, and watching her slowly decline, in watching anybody that you love slowly decline to this disease is devastating. It's really hard. And I used to also think that poor health and memory loss were just an inevitable part of aging, as you say. But actually, it's not true. So memory issues are very common as people age, but they're not normal. And there's so much that we can do actually to prevent or slow down the progression of that cognitive decline. So brain aging doesn't happen overnight. It's a very gradual process. And the early signs of dementia can actually be seen on images of the brain, scans of the brain, decades before a diagnosis. And for somebody now in the current time, if they live until about 85, currently they would have a nearly 50% chance of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's or other form of dementia. And, those are really bad odds. And, especially as people are living longer. And for me personally, I don't want a 50% chance of losing my mind. But the thing is that I can't start thinking about that when I'm 83. I need to be thinking about that now. And the earlier we start to be intentional about caring for our brain, the more likely we are then to be able to push out any of those negative years. But like you say, there's so much stigma attached to memory loss as it puts our capability into question. And so then what we do is we tend to hide it or quickly dismiss it or joke about it, and the changes that we see in ourselves. So we say things like, I used to do it. I'd forget my head if it wasn't screwed on. Or we get really frustrated when, like you say, you go into a room or you go up the stairs and you can't remember what on earth you've gone there for. And as well, it can kind of start to feel a little bit lonely because we're hiding these things. We don't necessarily want to tell other people about them. And so then, it can become a fear that starts to build up. So there are 6 categories of early warning signs that it's really important to be aware of. Like you say, if you just have 1 or 2, then it's something to be aware of and keep your eye on. The more of these that you have, the more serious and intentional that you need to be. So the first is the one that most people think of when it comes to memory issues. That would include things like noticing your memory's getting worse, misplacing things like your keys or finding them in unusual places, maybe having trouble remembering names or missing appointments. Another classic one is reading a book or an article and then not being able to remember much of it afterwards, forgetting to take medication or supplements, that kind of thing, relying more on memory aids. The next area is having trouble planning or problem solving. So that includes making plans and sticking to them, or finding it hard to follow a recipe that's got several directions in the recipe, or putting something together and you need to keep referring back to the instructions because you can't remember them. Finding it hard to focus on complex tasks, especially things involving maths. So the third category would be having confusion with times and places. So maybe driving to somewhere that's familiar, but actually you forgetting the route, getting easily confused or out of sorts, getting lost more easily. One of the reasons actually that Alzheimer's disease is being diagnosed later is the use of GPS devices and our phones, because what used to happen was when people several years ago couldn't find their way home, that would be a real warning sign, and they go to the doctor and they're, oh my goodness, I can't find my way home. Whereas now they just tap it into their phone or their sat nav and it takes them home. And what that is doing is it's delaying the diagnosis, when actually, again, earlier intervention would be more beneficial. So the fourth category would be struggling with words. So having trouble finding the right word, calling things by the wrong name, difficulty following along in a conversation, or wanting to limit conversation rather because you find it hard to engage, and keep repeating yourself. So the fifth area would be worsening judgment. So that would involve making an increasing number of bad decisions. So making mistakes with finances, that kind of thing. It's quite common for those in the early stages of dementia actually to make poor financial decisions. I know a heartbreaking story actually of a man, I'll call him Bob, who lost the family home and all the savings just a few years before being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He's now in a care home. And the sad thing in this particular story is that his sons don't visit him because they're so angry that he left their mum without the financial security. However, his brain was already deteriorating by that stage, and he actually wasn't able to make good decisions. We lose the ability to remember the things we've learnt, the life lessons that we've learnt, that help us normally make good decisions.
Can I just ask you there before you go to point 5? You know, that gentleman Bob had a family. Now he, you know, I know we try to hide these things, but sometimes you know, family can notice things. So perhaps you know, there is a responsibility as well, not on the only on the person to perhaps seek help, but for family and friends who might start noticing. Now, it's a difficult subject to talk about, but it's something that perhaps if you're noticing your partner or your friend with some of these warning signs that you're talking about and they're becoming more regular, we really need to have that conversation and perhaps show them some support and try to get them over that stigma that you said before. So I think there is, you know, for those of us who aren't experiencing those symptoms, but we know someone that we love is, we really should be there to support them in any way we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And, you know, with some of the things that I might touch on as well now, you know, there are things that as well that we can do, really practical things to support somebody when we see that those warning signs that we're really concerned about, like you say, talking with them. But sometimes that can be a little bit hard again because they don't want to feel that people are questioning their capability or you know, for themselves, they may be struggling to face the changes that they're already seeing in themselves.
Yes,
So
it's a difficult situation because, as you say, you know, perhaps a person won't be open to you providing support because they don't want to admit to themselves what's happening. But it can get to a point where it becomes dangerous to that person. So you need to be protecting them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I interrupted you in your
That's
point,
okay.
so we can go back to that, but I just wanted to ask your advice on that one.
That's a really good point, yeah. And then the final area I touched on a little bit again is that social withdrawal. So feeling like drawing back from social situations, feeling less interested in activities that you used to once find really fun, cutting back at work because you don't care as much, or taking less care of your physical appearance. So, everybody really needs to take care of their brain. But like I say, the more of these warning signs you have, then the more intentional that you need to be.
So, if we're worried about memory loss, if like you've actually mentioned some things and I'm thinking, oh, I experience that. I suppose it depends how often and so forth, but you still need to be mindful. So what steps should we be taking now? And, I know that you said before, don't wait till you're 83 or, but is it too late to even start making some changes now or taking some steps if you feel that you are experiencing some of those warning signs that you've mentioned?
Well, definitely what I would say is it's never too early or too late to start taking care of your brain. The brain and the body have an amazing capacity to heal. And if we put our brain and our body in a healing environment, it will do exactly that. And so that's how we can reverse some of these early warning signs. I've done it myself. I'm in a completely different place now to what I was those few years ago. And so, I know that that we can do it. So yeah, there are steps that you can take. There are 5 things really that I feel if everybody did this, they would be starting to put themselves in a better position. So one of them is to assess your brain regularly. So you can find online some cognitive assessments. I use one called Cognifit, and it's really fun. So you do the test. It then scores you on various aspects of cognitive function, and for each of those you get a score, and then you can then do exercises daily in order to improve the function of your brain. And I've only been doing it since the end of last year, this particular one, and I'm already 100 points better than I was at the end of last year. And so it's so encouraging when you see your brain improving. So I really would encourage people to take a cognitive assessment. It can, doing so kind of as well helps to, one, give us a baseline so that we know where we're at now. You can then retest on a regular basis, so you can see how things are going. You can see whether you're getting better or whether you're getting worse. So as well, that's really helpful. And as well, it can, taking an assessment like this can be a real motivator for making changes, because it's kind of like, okay, I know where I'm at now, and I'm just going to make it better. And so it kind of helps you to keep going and keep motivated, and helps you not to dismiss those early signs, which is easy to do because actually the test tells you this is exactly where you're at right now. Doing testing as well can, again, like I say, highlight areas of concern early enough, again, that you can take action. So that would be the first thing I'd encourage. And the next one would be to know your important health numbers. So things like your body mass index. I know it's not a perfect measure, but it gives a scale or understanding of your weight in relation to your height. Another one is your height to waist ratio, can be even better. But if your weight is a bit high, then actually trying to get your weight back into that optimal range is a really good thing to do. It's the same with something like vitamin D. If your levels are low, then you know that you can then take a supplement or get a bit more sunshine in order to improve your vitamin D levels. So there are certain important health numbers that can impact on brain health. And so making sure to get those into the optimum range is something that you really want to be focusing on. One thing I encourage all my clients to do is whenever they get a blood test, then to ask the doctor for the results, as in literally a printout of the results, so that then they can just really take an active engagement in their health, and know exactly where they're at, even if they're a bit on the low end of something or a bit on the high end of something where they shouldn't be. You know, it's good to know.
Well, I always ask I usually have a general checkup at least once or twice a year. And I always ask for a copy of my blood test results, even if they say, oh, no, you're fine, you're in the normal range. Because sometimes the results will show you previous results as well. So you can have a look at how you're tracking to the last time you had a blood test, or 3 or 4 blood tests ago, and it helps you to see, oh, I've improved in this area, but this one for some reason I've changed, and I still might be in the normal range, but perhaps closer to the extremities rather than the midpoint. So I think that's a good point just for general knowledge to know about your health, is to get a copy of your test results.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. And another thing you can do then is there are 11 risk factors that increase the risk of cognitive decline. And so knowing where you are on each of those risk factors, and each one of us is going to be different. So let's say, for example, the number one predictor of future memory problems is low blood flow to the brain. The brain needs a really good supply of blood and nutrients. And so you can improve your blood flow by eating well and being physically active. And so it's helpful then to know, do you have high blood pressure, or are you very sedentary during the day? So I have a job where I'm working at a computer 7 hours a day. And just recently I said to my husband, I was like, I'm just sitting, because I'm working at home now the majority of the time. And I'm like, I'm sitting so many hours a day. And so actually I've bought a standing desk, so that every now and then I kind of think, oh, I'm tired of sitting down, I'm going to stand up. And I can spend quite a bit of my day now standing, and we'll make sure to go out for walks, and just to get moving is really important. So it's knowing what each of those risk factors are, and then doing things to reduce the risks. And there are 11 of them. And the next one would then be nourishing your brain. So the brain uses it's only about 2% of the body's weight, but it uses about 20 to 30% of the body's calories. It's the most energy hungry organ in the body. And so choosing the right foods to eat is therefore one of the most important strategies to rescue your memory. If you eat a diet that's poor, nutritionally poor, then your brain is going to be less capable of reliable decision making and thinking quickly. So just having eating a nutrient dense diet, avoiding low fiber, high sugar processed foods, and you'll notice actually that your thinking can become clearer, and having fewer cravings, all of that can improve. So diet is really significant.
Are there any particular foods that we should be including, or just having as you say, a nutrient dense diet is enough?
Yeah, so highly recommend getting enough vegetables and fruit. they've done studies, and they would say that one of the biggest predictor of how long somebody can live is, believe it or not, is how long you think you're going to live. But the next predictor of how long somebody's going to live is actually how many fruit and vegetables they eat a day. And so the fruit and vegetables have got what are called like phytonutrients or bioflavonoids. You know, they're really powerful in terms of supporting our body in doing what it needs to do. And so the more of those that we can eat, the better. I would also recommend eating what I would call smart carbs. So like unrefined carbohydrates, so the brown rice, brown pasta, that kind of thing, sweet potatoes maybe rather than too much white potatoes. And yeah, definitely not eating much sugar. Sugar is very, very harmful in so many
all
ways.
areas. Yes, I agree. I agree. So what would be your number one strategy for optimizing brain health as we age?
Well, interestingly, I've literally just touched on it. Because actually sugar, and it's the amount of sugar that we're eating nowadays is having a profoundly damaging effect on our bodies and brains. And I was looking it up. I know the statistics for England. So the NHS in England, the National Health Service would recommend that adults would eat no more than 30 grams of sugar a day. Which is actually, it's one of the highest. A lot of countries are quite a bit lower than that. But the average Brit actually has about 100 grams of sugar a day. I mean, that's like incredible. So I was looking out for New Zealand as well. And the statistics I found for New Zealand average between 120 and 150 grams a day. And you kind of think, how is that possible?
Yes.
There's just a phenomenal amount of sugar. And I'm not eating any, so hardly any. So somebody's eating my portion. But yeah, but it's the hidden sugars in processed foods and in drinks. We're drinking an awful lot of sugar, and it's having a devastating effect.
And I think, I just think on that point there, there's a lot of hidden sugars, and you'll find that you might buy a product that says low fat. So you think, oh, that's going to be healthy. But it all comes down to taking the time to read the label, the nutrition label, because you might find that it's low fat or 99% fat free, and you think, oh, great, that's healthy. But if you look at the nutrition label, the sugar content might be almost your recommended daily intake, or the salt component, or there's something in there to make it taste better. So you've really got to think about as you say, the hidden sugars within all these processed foods. And the easiest way to cut down is to cut out the processed foods, isn't it? Because then that way you're having perhaps natural sugars with your fruits and in other non-processed foods. And we do need some sugar to give us energy and so forth. But it's that, not understanding what is in the product that we're eating. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I grew up as well. For years, I thought that fat was the enemy. That fat was making people fat. But actually, ever since the low-fat diet came in, everybody's weight has just gone up. And the reason is that actually it's not fat that makes us fat. It's sugar and unrefined carbohydrates. Because what happens is that whenever we eat sugar and refined carbs, the body has to release insulin in order to get the glucose out of our bloodstream and into the cells where we can then use it for energy. But it's also, insulin has two roles. So that's one role, but its other role is as a fat storing hormone. And so what it does is when we eat sugar, some of it goes to our cells, and the rest of it, if we're eating too much, the only thing that the body can do is to store it, because that's how we are designed. It's how our bodies are designed. And so the more we eat, the more we store. And it leads to weight gain over time. And so, food manufacturers know that sugar is addictive. The more we eat, the more we want, the more we'll buy. And so that's why they're putting sugar in so much of the food that we eat. I mean, it's like, why is sugar in salad dressings? If sometimes I have a sugar thing that I encourage people to do, and it's exactly like you say, to look at labels, to read menus, to know about what's in the food that they're eating. And somebody texts me, and they're just like, I can't believe this Caesar salad's got sugar in it. And the other day, somebody texted me, and they're like, stock cubes have got sugar. And, I didn't even know either of those either. It's just like, why? Why is sugar in those things? The only reason it's there is because sugar's addictive.
And because so if you were making those ingredients, like if you were making stock yourself, or if you were making a salad dressing, you wouldn't put sugar in there, would you? It would be just natural, with natural products.
That's right. Yeah. And so, I encourage people to take a look at pick a local cafe, one of the chains that actually has like their menu online, and they can have the sugar content of things. It's like, take a look at the menu and find the item on the menu that has the most sugar in it. And you'll be just so surprised. There was one where the luxury toast was 39 grams of sugar. And normally you would think that the luxury toast actually would probably be the least sugary option, But there it was, 39 grams of sugar.
Wow.
It's more than an entire day's.
Yes. Recommendation. Well, that's an easy point, that we can start with, because we can all start reading the labels, or being a bit more mindful of what products we're buying, and when we go out for a meal, that sort of thing. So I've got another couple of questions before we go, but one, I was thinking about, how does stress and impact our brain? Because for me, I would think that added stress would also help towards that memory decline, because you're constantly under pressure, and there's the call for being more mindful, for meditation, for things like that. So surely that would help in the aging process as well.
So stress actually is another thing that's incredibly harmful, actually, for the body and the brain. It has far-reaching implications, and so it really impacts on the thyroid, because what happens is the body thinks, okay, I'm already hyped up, I'm amped up, because of the stress, and so the thyroid pulls back on producing thyroid hormones, but the thyroid helps to maintain our metabolism. So if the thyroid isn't doing what it needs to do, then everything kind of slows down. And so heart rate slows down, digestion slows down, and it affects our brain as well. And stress also impacts, because again, it can cause us to eat more unhealthily. It can impact on our sleep by causing us to be anxious and therefore either waking in the night or finding it difficult to fall asleep. And sleep is so important for the brain. And yeah, it can impact on hormones in our body, not just the thyroid, but other hormones as well. So yeah, it really is one to, ever since I've learned about the impact of stress, I've been doing whatever I can actually not to be in chronic stress, because it's just not worth it in terms of the impact on us.
So you have a program where you empower people to stay mentally sharp as they age. So I wondered if you just wanted to tell us a little bit about the program and what you do with your clients.
Yeah, I'd love to. So as part of my program, I ask clients to go through some initial assessments. There's a handful of them. And that's so that, again, we can be really clear on where they're at right now. And then we work together on a bespoke plan according to their risk factors and the things that apply for them, to get them to where they want to be in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now. So we're looking for the long term, not looking at short-term fixes. This is like set yourself up for long-term having a good functioning brain. So like I said, there are 11 risk factors. And so we identify their greatest risk. It's a very tailored approach. The things that could cause a cognitive decline in me can be different from somebody else. And so then I also help them to connect then with why this is important to them. And it's very easy to set goals. We all do it, and then find it hard to maybe stick to them when things come along, life comes along and throws us a bit off track. So I'm there to then help support them through that process to really make this a reality. And so I'm totally committed to helping them be successful and seeing the results come through because of all the lovely things that they're doing to support their brain.
And I think it's important to be able to reach out to someone like yourself, because sometimes we can probably find all this information ourselves, but you can get information overload. You can get overwhelmed with where to start. And if you're really concerned and you really want some help, investing in getting some help from someone like yourself will make life much easier, because you're taking them, each person, through their particular steps that they need to address, and you're really helping them, I suppose, clear out all that overload of information and just focus on what they need to do, where they are now, and what they need to do to improve the situation. And it's sort of like handing yourself over to someone to look after you, to help you and guide you. So I think that the service that you offer is very important, because, as I said, a lot of people would like to do things, but they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, very much so. And yeah, I would as well just really encourage people that they're not stuck with the brain they have. They can make it better. And I think as well, having that hope of knowing that you're working with somebody who gets it, they get where they're at now, and can help them move towards a different future, be on a different path, is really valuable.
Yeah, and also the fact that you've when you say you get it, well, you've actually lived it. You've been
Mm.
through the experience yourself. And so you're not just trained in being a health coach, you've actually, and brain health, you've lived that experience. So
Mm.
therefore, I think that adds a new dimension as well. So that's
Yeah.
really good. And what I'll be doing, Alison, is putting all the links to your website, which would show your program and services and any other links that you need for me to put in there so that people can contact you, and they will be able to see what you do and as I said, contact you. So they'll be going in the show notes. So look, it's been lovely to chat to you today, and I appreciate you coming on, because it's early morning for me and it's late in the evening for you over in the UK. But just before you go, I do have a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a woman living well mean to you?
Oh, I think it means having good relationships, having a mood that's stable. It means having energy to do the things that you really enjoy doing. And it means, yeah, there have been times in my life when I've been in constant pain. And I think being well and not being in pain, so that you could just live life to its fullest, and as well just being mentally active.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds a good note to finish on. So thank you very much again, Alison, for joining me. It's been very informative, and I know it's a topic that perhaps doesn't get discussed as much as what we should. Everyone's talking about menopause or, other health issues, but I think that this topic has been very good. I've got a lot out of it, and I know that my listeners will too. So thank you very much for taking the time to share your knowledge with us.
Oh, Sue, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison. Well, that was such an informative and interesting discussion that I had with Allison Liu today about our brain health and memory loss, Alzheimer's and dementia, and what we can do to identify the signs and steps that we can take to help to improve our brain health. Now, I know that I'm going to be practicing some of the steps that Alison has suggested today, and I hope you will too. And I'd love you to share your thoughts with me. So don't forget to leave a like and to leave a comment for me, and also to share this episode with a friend who will definitely benefit from Alison's thoughts today. Well, that's it for another episode. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I did. And remember, until next time, to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.